There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Welcome to No Filter. I'm Mia Friedman, and my guest today is someone I've wanted to have on the show for a really long time, and planets have finally aligned. I am thrilled to be sitting down with Hamish Blake. He's funny, he's witty, he's humble, he's a self-made man. And you probably know him best from his incredibly successful partnership with Andy Lee. Hamish and Andy have been absolute icons in radio and then on television. But in the last few years, they've been branching out a little bit and doing their own independent projects. Hamish hosts Lego Masters and he has a podcast about being a father. And that's what we're going to talk about today. He has two kids, 9-year-old Sonny, 6-year-old Rudy, and he has an incredible wife, Zoe Foster Blake, who I've known for a really long time, since before they got together, back when they just used to be friends. She too is incredibly successful, so they are very much in the public eye. But they have this really unique position of being very likeable. Hamish is possibly the most likeable person in Australia. Does anyone not like Hamish? He's just so lovely. But today in this conversation, you're going to hear a different side of him, not a side that's not lovely. Well, maybe he has one. I haven't seen it. Certainly didn't see it in this interview. But it's quieter. It's more thoughtful. It's more raw, I guess, although that word's a bit overused. But he talks about a particular thing that drives him a bit crazy, which is an aspect of fame he really struggles with. And we also talk about what makes him angry and anxious and how he explains fame to his kids. We talked about the birthday cake and why he does it. I think you're going to love this conversation. Here is Hamish Blake. Your youngest started school this year?
Yeah. This is her first year.
What was that first day like?
First day of school?
Yeah,
this
for
year?
you, because it's like the first day of school for your youngest.
I think about that all the time because we're done at 2 kids. I have taken steps to cease the production. I've had the snip. So
I was trying to think of what else it could be.
Made it sound like I've hired a security guard. If it ever looks like we're going to have sex, he stops us.
Correct.
So knowing that she's my every day, I have this thought where I go, this is the youngest kid I'll ever have.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind. And it helps you stay present. I think it does help you appreciate, well, you're not getting any younger, so like enjoy this. And we just know it goes like way too fast. And you fall into that like duality all the time of going like, this year seems like it will never end.
Yeah.
But you also know that last year felt like that and it was over before it began. So for me, Rue's first day of school was, it's not even so much the first day. It's just the ones that punch you in the guts, I reckon, where the little moment where she's like, all right, I'm okay to go upstairs now. Because you sort of, I walk her in every day and we hang up her bag and then she's like, see ya. And even like today, even this morning, I got a kick in the guts because the little stairs going around the corner up to the classroom because it's sort of on the second level. And I would normally walk her up to the door, but her friend was there today and she wanted to go up with her friend, which is great. So I was like, okay, we had a little cuddle at the bottom of the stairs. And then I just heard her voice from like round the corner. I mean, I get very emotional about this stuff. I get super emo. Even just the fact that she yelled it from around the corner, it's like wasn't looking at me. It's like, bye, Dad. I mean, if there was a guitar nearby and I could play, I would have just started playing Cats in the Cradle straight away. I was like,
that song haunts my dreams.
So it's me. It's the turtle backpack running away from you because I'm still in primary school age. I've got a kinder and my boys in year 3. It's the turtle where they're like running with their arms out and the bag's too big for them, but they're off. And you want them to be away, like you want them to be gone. But
because it means you've done your job.
Yeah, you don't want them to be completely dependent on you for their whole life, but it just still kicks you in the guts because you know the contact hours are now reducing and they're not increasing.
It's a funny job that redundancy is built into it if you do it well.
Oh, and it has to be. And you know it. You do know it. And look, and again, I just go full circle on all this stuff. This is where I always come back to going, so what are you going to do about it? Because you're going to feel this way in 1 year, you're going to feel this way in 3 years, and you'll give anything to be back to today. So rather than like mourning too much, you have to get into today, because otherwise you'll spend all of today not present. And then in 3 years' time, when you would have given anything to be back here, you'll be annoyed because you had the chance. You're now actually living the day that you'll wish you had in the future. So you might as well get into it.
Do you find that that's pressure that you put on yourself, like enjoy the moment? I don't know if people come up and say this to dads, but often, obviously it doesn't happen to me anymore. Now I've become the person who does it to other people. But if you'll be in like a supermarket or you'll have a baby or whatever, and someone usually quite old will come up to you and say, enjoy every second, it goes so fast.
Talked to my mate about this yesterday, who's got a 2-year-old and has gastro, and was up all night with him. And I was like, see, this is the flip side where it's like, we know we'll miss it. But
Did you say to him, enjoy every moment?
Because he was sort of, we were actually talking about this thing and this concept came up, and I said, see, this is the bit where I now with a 9-year-old, I'm like, oh man, when my boy was 2, I'm just remembering romantically. I was like, let's be honest, you want to fast forward some bits because no one wants to be up at 3 a.m. with gastro. Like, of course, enjoy the moment. Yes, I know when we're 7, he would give anything to be holding that little 2-year-old hand again. But we're in the thick of it, and it's okay to want to not be up with gastro. So, yeah, I think it's that, again, holding both things that are true, which is just sort of like, we all love this for what it's at, but you're also definitely allowed to go, this sucks, and we're in the weeds.
It seems like you've internalized that old lady at the supermarket that comes up and says, enjoy every second. It sounds like you're constantly reminding yourself to enjoy every second.
It just is the way my brain is built, I think, a little bit. And I put it down to perhaps being lucky enough to have friends who are a little bit further down the path that had kids, and you're like, all right, well, if I believe them, this is what I got to be enjoying. It's
that expression, the days are long and the years are short.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't understand that concept until you have kids, really.
Totally. The thing I do love about it, though, is this is definitely the bit where I think it's worth saying I'm constantly messing it up too. Like, I'm not perfectly executing being in the moment. Like, I'm not in the middle of a meltdown about like who got more ice cream or whatever and going, this is great.
I'll miss this.
Oh, God. Sorry,
I'll never
guys.
be this young
I'm just
and
going to
cute
hold your
again.
hands and just watch you be ungrateful. So it's like, so, you know, you get sucked into all the normal like churn of it. And so that absolutely happens. But I think what is valuable in having that mindset of going, but remember, as poor as my scorecard might be on any given day, like remember, overall, it's still true that you'll love to be back here. And the great thing about parenting is like you get another shot tomorrow. Yes, they're 1 day older, but they're not 10 years older tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
That is the bit where it's good that it goes past just slow enough for you to have one more shot before the horse is completely bolted.
For a corrective experience.
A corrective experience. A lot of course correcting going on.
When women are younger, I know that I always imagined when I would be a mum, it was like, I'm going to have my first baby at this age and my second baby at that age. It was just a given that I would have kids. Never occurred to me not to. Did you always imagine that you'd be a dad? And what did that look like to you when you were a little boy?
Interesting. Really good question. I reckon, this is just me and analysing now, I never thought about the moment of having a baby. Like, I never thought about the absolute brand newborn baby. So here's my theory. I reckon when you think about having kids, you probably are thinking about your own childhood and what you would do for me as a dad, for you as a mum. I was like, where's the bit that I'm remembering that was tricky, or I wish, you know, my parents understood me more, and what am I going to do better, and what kind of a dad am I going to be? So I did have those thoughts pretty early on. I remember when I was 15 and like just not connecting with dad in that classic teenage way. I wrote a Word document and I looked for it last year and I just can't find it. It's on a floppy disk somewhere. But I sat down and I was like, I'm going to do this so when I'm a dad and I've got a 15-year-old, like this is how I think, because he is just acting like he's just not understanding how I think. And I'm going to write this and I know it's me because I'm me.
Yeah.
It's like a time machine. I was like, I will believe me when my kids are 15 and I'm
So you were like, you wrote it to future dad Hamish.
To future me as like I guess as like a therapeutic way to get out of this like gridlock we were in and just butting heads. Now I can't find it, but I remember doing that. So I'm like, well, I was thinking about being a dad, But I reckon I was thinking about being the dad that I needed, not necessarily like, oh, day one when I have a little bouncing baby and there's flowers around.
I don't think anyone thinks that. I never thought about that.
I knew
either.
I'd go through that bit to get to the bit, the other bits and pieces that you then think about. Again, I'll be the same thing. In my bones, I just knew it never was a binary decision I remember making. I was just like, well, that's progressing. That's somewhere in the future.
Did you want a big family, a small family? Did you ever think about those kind of details?
Not really. I reckon it probably has more to do with maybe my broader attitude to life, where I think I was sort of like, whatever comes along, I will be stoked and we can make this will be great, work with it. I also red flag myself a bit anytime I catch myself specifying a must-have outcome. I just think it's a dangerous, silly game to play because, again, it's like under this illusion of like control.
Yeah.
And then also the inverse is like, so what are you saying if you have 3 girls and you wanted like boy, girl, boy? Like, of course life will be great. So I just think it's just part of my mind that anytime I catch myself going like, okay, well, I have to have a certain outcome and then only then will everything else be justified and that's the only good path. Like, I just don't think that's an easy way to live happily. I think I've always been a lot more interested in a trajectory rather than like a destination.
And I wanted to ask about when it went from being a cerebral concept, like I will be a dad someday, obviously, to could I have kids with this person? Like you dated and you don't have to go into specifics about specific people, but when did you first start considering the possibility of it actually being real with a particular person?
Oh, I think with Zoe, like pretty soon after Zoe and I were together, it wasn't even really verbalized. It was just like, oh, well, this is it. This is it. Like 100%. This is it. And I know I'm going to have kids and Zoe knows she's going to have kids one day. So we didn't talk about it, but it came as zero surprise when I think we've been married for maybe only a year or two, was I was like, all right, we're going to change the policy on this is a thing we don't want to happen to this is a thing we really do want to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, great. Yeah, it's time. Let's do it. So I think with Zoe, again, it was pretty effortless, but I think that's a good sign. That was the moment.
Did you look at her and imagine her as a mother before you sort of...
Yeah, absolutely. When you're young too, like, you know.
How old were you?
When I had Sonny.
No, but when you got together.
Oh, we got together at 29.
Yeah, right.
At the time, I was like, better get cracking because I'm getting old. But now I'm like, oh, what a young kid.
You really thought that at 29?
Because we grew up in the entertainment industry, like we spent 10 years, like me and Andy spent sort of from the time we were like 21. Like when Zoe and I got together at 29, like I was finishing what I thought was my career. Like we were like, we've done Drive Radio. Like I was like winding down my career.
Semi-retirement.
So I was like,
30s.
well, this is like, it's time to grow. It's time to be an adult.
Yeah, right.
And we're engaged. And then we sort of went off into TV stuff and started doing gap year, like 4 years of doing gap years. But there was that feeling of like, well, we've been around long enough now. Like it kind of felt like we had one career done and behind us. So I didn't feel that old, but we were like, oh, right, we've been mucking around for a while. And then we just continued to muck around a bunch more. So by the time we had kids, I think I was 32 or 33 when Sonny was born. So I would say right in a pretty regular zone in terms of age.
Do you remember the day that you found out that you were going to be a dad?
Yeah, I do. Robin Butler and Wayne Hope made a movie called Now Add Honey, and I was a very small role in that movie, and it was the last day of shooting, and we were going to have dinner at Robin and Wayne's house that night. So rushing home from set, came home, and Zoe had like a little package. It was a little jumpsuit that said, world's best dad, and what I now know is a positive pregnancy test. But at first I was like,
Wastic.
These days I'd be like, oh, it's a rat test.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I was like, now I know what 2 lines means. But back then, that was the first time I'd ever seen one.
How did you feel?
I was just stoked. I was like, all right. I mean, because we've been trying, or we'd like the green light had gone on, and we were really lucky. Like it wasn't too many months into the learning about fertility windows that we were away. And I mean, my first thing was like, not uncommon to a lot of guys just to be like, oh my God, and not uncommon to a lot of women who are about to have their first baby. Like, I have no idea what to do here.
Yeah.
But that doesn't drown out the excitement. Like, you're like, oh my God. I think I was like, this is it. Like, we're going to give it a shot to do this and do it well. It's that stage you're like, I got no business thinking I'll be good at this. I got no business thinking I know what I'm doing, but I do know I've got a shot. And then all your attention sort of turns to what are you going to do with your shot?
The next 9 months, I want to ask what that's like for a guy, because for a woman, it's like it's all happening. There's hormones, it's literally happening inside your body. But what's it like to watch your partner do that? So you're going to become a dad, but nothing actually changes.
Yeah. I mean, guys have it really easy. And I have a shade of guilt even saying this, but I know lots of guys go through this where they're like, okay, this is happening. I got 9 months to get my head around it because my body's not changing and I might have to put together a crib, but like that seems doable in 9 months. So you have this thing where you can kick the psychological side of it down the road 9 months because
you don't have to stop drinking. You don't have to
no
stop
hormones,
eating sushi.
No. In fact, you have to do so little that you realize that the biggest risk you run is forgetting how much your partner has to do. Like you're like the biggest danger you can get into. Like the ramifications are so real for a woman. Like your body's really changing. Your energy levels, are clearly all over the place. Like you know what it's like. I'm not here to tell you what it's like being pregnant, but your partner's living this very real thing. Your biggest danger is forgetting that they're living the real thing. And that's a very low cost thing for you to take on. So it's like, just remember that your wife is growing a baby and that things are going to be a bit different.
Were you one of the we're pregnant guys?
I think we're having a baby is very exciting. No, I don't think I ever said that. I mean, I remember just not knowing how to feel psychologically. And now doing this podcast, doing How Other Dads Dad, like we speak to a lot of young dads on the show too. Like I think a lot of the guys that listen to the show, we have lots of women that listen to the show too and like lots of people of all different ages. But a band, like quite a hefty band, is that first 6 months dad. And so they're really fresh from coming to going, hey, well, look, 8 months ago I didn't have a baby and now I have one. And I'm trying to get my head around this and I'm bringing with it all my hopes and dreams and feelings and baggage. And I remember that really well. Like I remember clearly just having that feeling of like, I don't really know what to think. But you also, there's also a thing with guys because you totally understand that the hierarchy of needs, you are rightfully like right down the bottom. But you still are wondering. You're still trying to make sense of what's going on and how you can be supportive and how you can be a good partner during that experience. So it's that funny thing of like it's a real need for the guys to like figure out like where their heads are at, but it's not the most important need at all. So sometimes it gets a bit ignored because if you have to triage things like, of course, baby, mama, they're the important bits. So sometimes then guys just sort of figure it out. Like they're kind of left to like figure out what's going on. And I just remember the main goal being protect the environment for Zoe to do what she needs to do with the help she has.
She had a tough pregnancy with Sonny and she had something about her hips or her pelvis, I can't remember. Yeah. She was on crutches by the end of it.
Yes.
What did you learn about her through that phase?
I mean, I think this is pretty common for a lot of guys, but you're like, you see your partner do the most incredible thing that a human being can do. And you see their version of doing it too. So I think that's the bit where you fall more in love because you're like, oh, you get to see their approach to doing this thing that is the hardest thing a human being can do. So it's astounding because you're in awe, especially not especially as a bloke, but as a bloke too, because you're like, you don't have a frame of reference for this. Like guys will never know. If your wife is like, well, I did an Iron Man and you're like, oh, okay, I'll have a go at that. Like you could have a go at it if you want, if that's the kind of thing you're into, or if they're like, whatever, this is just the one thing you don't have a frame of reference
and you
for.
can't help, like you couldn't help her gestate the baby. You couldn't take any of the burden from her.
Yeah.
When she was doing this on behalf of both of you.
You can not eat stuff in front of her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want you to not eat stuff either, so you can go and sit in the car and eat your stuff. So, yeah, I just remember being completely annoyed. And then, of course, during the birth, that goes to a whole other level. But it's astonishing. And we talk about this a little bit on How Other Dads Dad too. And I mentioned it on one of the episodes, I can't remember which one, but it's, again, that feeling for a lot of guys because we're not going through the hormonal change too. There's that feeling of everyone tells you this is the greatest day of your life. And I distinctly remember feeling holding Sonny for the first time was incredible. There was like a little moment where we touched noses and I was just like, then my hormones went there and I was like, all right, I get this. I'm done. Like this is all about you now. And I felt that kind of like shift in my center of gravity just immediately go to him. But you're also like on edge a bit because it's the first time you've been in a hospital, first time in a birthing suite. Everyone's birthing experience is different. And
was it a stressful birth? Like what was it like for you?
No.
Not a lot of focus on the guy.
No,
but
you can leave if you want. They don't.
You can, but like watching your partner, again, when you can't do anything, was that difficult? Watching your partner in pain?
No, it feels like you can't say that. I mean, you're just a witness. I don't think I can even use that word because it wasn't difficult because there was someone near me doing something much harder.
But was it what you expected? And you're saying it wasn't because you felt a bit anxious rather than purely overjoyed.
But it was. But I think what I'm saying is like you're taking in so much new data. You're like everything that's happening is the first time you've really come across this.
It's like I just watched a person come out of my wife.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, and that's like I'm not that old trope of
to
like.
To be clear, that's not. I mean, it is the most normal thing in the world, but like that's not an everyday occurrence.
It's not, and so that it's like, part of your brain just going. It's literally that part of your brain just going. Gee, you don't see that every day.
No,
but then you're also just like this because it's a serious medical environment.
Yeah,
you're afraid. You're on that edge of just going. It's a very real thing. You've got two people's lives here that, in other circumstances, are very, very close to being unsafe or not.
And something could go wrong.
There's many, many things that go wrong. And, you know, you have no control over any of that, nor should you have as the husband. Definitely leave it to the doctors. But it's just that thing of you're like, this is intense. Like I'm meeting this thing that I love more than anything immediately. But I also want to know, is he okay? Like, is he alive? And
did you know he was going to be a boy?
Yeah, accidentally. Our obgyn, the day that Zoe was starting to go into labour, we went in to have a checkup. And,
I've never heard it called an obgyn before.
Is that
I would
OBGYN?
say I've never heard anyone say it as a word. I've read it, and I always think obgyn, like gynecologist.
You're probably right.
It's one of those things I've never said out loud. I've read it a million times.
You're probably right.
Let's take obgyn.
Or do people say OBGYN? I think that's what they say, isn't it?
I don't know. I probably would just say obstetrician in this instance.
Obstetrician, yeah.
Because that's what they're doing.
Anyway, we had a guy called Budget Dave, and he had a certificate 4 in childcare because we were like trying to cut costs.
And it worked.
So we went and saw Slippery Dave, and he was like, "Mate, I reckon she's ready to pop." So
Dave the obgyn.
Yeah, Dave the obgyn. Yeah, so that's why he was like, "Oh, don't call me an OBGYN.
No,
they've got degrees. They've got degrees." But the woman that we were with, she said something like, "This could happen tonight." She's like, "Yeah, I actually felt his head." And I picked up on it, but she just said it so casually and then sort of kept going with stuff. I was like, oh, that's okay. She hasn't spoiled it because like often in baby books and stuff, they'll just decide to gender the baby. They'll just be like, when your baby's coming, she's going to be this or he's going to be that. So I was like, she must have just call them all he's and no big deal. So I didn't really think anything of it except then that night when we're in the delivery suite, one of the attending people was like, do you guys know the sex? And then our OBGYN went, well, I actually let it slip today, but nobody caught me. And I was like,
oh. So then you knew.
We've made it right to the 1 yard line. And I know. But I obviously didn't tell Zoe. I was like, and then, so I just had a little moment saying there while there's the heavy breathing and stuff going on to be like, oh my God, I'm having a little boy. How cool.
Had you played through what you wanted?
No, but again, I think it's that thing. I don't care. Because I'm like, the trajectory is we're going into parenthood and whoever it's with and whatever happens, like whatever our adventure is, I just feel like I'll be doing it a disservice by even half fantasizing about something else because it's going to be what it's going to be and you'll love it.
I've listened to a lot of episodes of your show and I heard a really interesting one with Adam Hills, your interview with Adam Hills, and he talked about I didn't want a boy because I didn't feel like I was qualified to be the father of a boy.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, man, really powerful.
I was really hoping for a girl because I didn't consider myself capable of raising a boy because I didn't think I was a proper man.
Wow.
That was such a weird thing and I still can't quite get my head around it. You know, I would look at other blokes and go, nah, you're a proper bloke. You're a proper bloke. You've got your shit together. I don't know what I am. I'm a weird loser, comedian, whatever. I couldn't even raise myself properly as a bloke. I guess it comes down to that ridiculous kind of idea of what being a man is.
100%.
And certainly in Australia, you're raised to believe that a man is a certain way. And I always looked at that and gone, well, I don't think that's me.
I don't play footy and I can't fix stuff.
I mean, I do play footy, but I can't fix stuff.
So you had a boy and then a girl. How have those two experiences differed in your feelings about being a father?
Good question. Sorry, let me just percolate it a bit. But just on the Hillsy thing, I was like, again, I think it comes down to that thing of like we're bringing whatever our own issues, not little, but our own wounds and stuff were from our childhood, we bring them to the table as parents, right? And for whatever reason, I thought that was so beautiful the way Hillsy expressed that. I also felt like it was really worth saying, like, you're exactly who I would love to raise a boy because
Yeah.
he's so kind and such a good person for exactly that reason. Because he was like, I don't know about footy or cars and stuff. I was like, well, I think they're the dads we need. We need all types of dads. You know what I mean? And that's what he would have instantly realized had he had boys in his life. So there was that thing of like, but you know, he had that insecurity. And I think it was a beautiful thing to say because whether it's that specific one or whatever our own insecurities are, we just can't not bring them to parenting. And they're the toughest parts about parenting because you're like, oh, this is actually my own insecurities.
What have you brought?
I see it at school. I see it now watching social dynamics emerge. My challenge for myself is to step back because I often feel the words coming out of my mouth. It's like an urge to, for want of a better term, like interfere when I hear stories about the schoolyard and this person did this, like I can feel this urge to be like, well, just maybe, you know, well, you don't want to upset that person too much. So I think, because I'm just like, that's all me going, whatever it is I'm remembering that happened in year 6 or year 8 or whatever it was, it's a fear of going, I don't want you to repeat that mistake. And it's foolishness. And it's this like, we talk about like the foolishness of thinking that you could exert some sort of control on the perfect outcome. No chance of that happening whatsoever. So on several levels, I know it's wrong. When I want to give advice on how to handle a friendship, that's my own insecurities from back in my school days.
But maybe you've just got good advice.
No.
Because of all the things you learned and the mistakes you made.
Maybe, but I don't reckon it comes in that moment. I also think it's like kind of a bit arrogant on me to think that A, I could understand exactly what their day was like, and then B, that applying a 41-year-old's like
Wisdom,
mindset to
life
it.
lessons.
And then I actually play through that fantasy. I go, all right, hotshot. If you really want to sit your son or daughter down and go, hey guys, this is how you should play it. Like if that's really what you want, I always sort of say to myself, well, then you're sort of going, you want them to have your level of social skill. You're essentially saying you want them to act like a 41-year-old. And if you put a 9-year-old in a situation and they act like a 41-year-old, they'll have no friends. So it's like, even if you get your wish here, you'll alienate them. If you train, even if we live in this fantasy where and this would never happen, but if you could train your child to behave exactly as you would behave and this like delusion that we have that we could handle this and we can help them, you'll put a 41-year-old into year 3. And that's not what this situation needs. This needs a 9-year-old boy who just knows his dad loves him and he's interested in listening about his day and he'll sort it out.
And you don't need to solve it.
I do not need to solve it because I can't because I'm trying to solve it with a 41-year-old's brain. And it's not the time to apply 41-year-old wisdom.
Up next, after the break, I wanted some stories about Hamish and Zoe's life at home, how Hamish and his kids deal with the schoolyard drama, and I also asked him what he thinks about fans coming up to him in the street every day of his life, including my own daughter. And also something that unsurprisingly fires him up, his family being stalked by paparazzi. Keep listening. Catch you after the break. During the first pregnancy, every couple has a conversation where they go, you know, this baby's not going to change us. Like, we're just going to be the same. The baby's got to fit in with our life.
100%.
You know, we're not going to fit in with the baby's life. The baby's going to fit in with our life. We'll still travel. We'll do all those things. Did you think that?
Everyone does. Everyone does.
And when did it occur to you that maybe not?
Oh, I mean, realistically, day one, but I think every new parent goes, like, I think we might have even said the phrase access all areas. Like, this baby's just coming, like he's got a lanyard and he's coming with us.
We just put the capsule under the table
And I mean,
where we are at the pub, like,
I mean,
you know.
we were no good at that. You do see parents that are pretty good at that. Like, then you hear stories about like, oh yeah, when I was growing up, like, you know, my dad and mum, like, they were in a band and I just like slept in the combi and like went to gigs.
But I'm a bit older than you, but we grew up, Gen Xers grew up like you'd go to a restaurant with your parents or at a dinner party, you just go to sleep under the table.
All the time.
Yeah.
We used to go to an Italian restaurant called Antonio and Giuseppe's in Glen Waverley in Melbourne, and I would eat spaghetti bolognese and fall off my chair because I was asleep. And then like Dad would just kick me under the table. And then
and you just lay under the table until it was time to go home.
The car transfer was a much more common situation with like 6, 7, 8-year-olds because they were just like, hey, you're coming with us.
And then you just lie on the back seat all the way home.
And I remember though with babies though, babies are just like, babies blow people's minds because there's so much power in such a little person. Because it's sleep deprivation, like realistically, they break you because there's a reason that they use it at Guantanamo Bay as a way for people to crack. It's like, all right, I want to go to sleep. I'll do anything you say. So I remember early on, I reckon it's when your lounge room fills up with plastic. Because at first you're like, we're going to live our life. And then you look out to your lounge room and you're like, you're not living your life, mate. You're standing at the sink eating leftover porridge with a little spoon.
Yeah.
And this house is full of plastic.
How did I get here? But I'm not unhappy about it.
Oh, I'll take the deal. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing too. Like we talk about this a bit on the podcast too. And I think it bears repeating because it's like there's many, many great gags you can make about how mental life gets in that first year and how your life is flipped upside down and it sucks and you can't get any sleep. And that's true. That's fun to make jokes about that stuff. But the thing I always say to friends or guys I know that are about to have their first baby, I was like, look, that stuff is the low-hanging fruit for the jokes. I was like, the bit you also need to know is, given that that's all true, that it's like super hard, imagine how much you must love this thing for that to all be worth it. Every single parent is taking that deal. Like no one's giving them back. Well, very rarely no one's giving them back. So we're all in that deal because we love this thing so much. So can you imagine how much you must love something for it to just be like shitting on you and waking you up all night and giving zero concern to the house that you've worked hard to provide and just destroying things and cancelling all your plans on you, and you wouldn't change it. So I think you got to remember that we all take the deal.
Glennon Doyle wrote in a book called Untamed about how every generation gets a memo in hospital. And, you know, Gen X's parents, our parents got a memo, take your kid home, like, good luck, whatever, let them be a kid. We got the memo, take this child home and never let anything bad ever happen to them. Never let them have a bad emotion, a bad experience. You make sure you are the concierge, the snowplow, the helicopter, all of those things.
Yeah.
And we somehow internalize that that's what it means to be a good parent, to never let our child experience any difficulty.
Yeah, or that it would reflect like that you hadn't done your job well.
Well, yes, and also they'd be damaged forever. Whereas our parents, it was a bit more benign neglect. Go out and play, I'll see you when the sun goes down. Have you had to fight that instinct in yourself? Because you seem a bit helicoptery, but not like I am as well.
Yeah.
Like I think we all are, because what's the alternative? I don't know anyone who isn't. Do you fight that or do you just lean into being the helicopter?
No, I guess you find your own safe hovering altitude.
Yeah.
Because I agree, we probably do overly suffer from that. Like, you know, in broad terms, like not being willing to let kids be kids and make mistakes and hurt themselves and get broken arms and just, I think it helps me adjust my mentality when you kind of go like, just know that will happen, that there's going to be 10 trips to emergency. So then when you are going, you're like, well, this is just number 4 of 10 and it won't be the last, and this is part of being a kid. It helps me know that was expected, because I do probably catch myself a bit, because you're worried that, like, mate, if you get up there, like this ends in a broken leg. Like,
isn't that
100%.
funny? You've gone straight to the physical and I'm thinking of the emotional.
But then
like I'm thinking of the playground, right? And it's like the hardest emotion I feel for my kids to experience is disappointment. Crushes me. I'll do anything to avoid my kids feeling disappointed, which is terrible parenting, because they need to feel disappointed.
Because we do this in every part of our life. Like on the podcast, we interview men, and now a little bit this season, one honorary dad, Maggie Dent, Australia's greatest honorary dad, but predominantly men who are now by and large successful, but didn't grow up that way, like didn't grow up well off. And so this whole idea of going, well, you came from an environment that wasn't ideal, but it, again, really broadly speaking, there's that idea that like it forged you in the flames. You became this thing. And a lot of guys think about this too, because culturally, like things are easier than they were for us as a kid. But we know that it was from that hardship and just long days of being bored or broke or whatever, like that lit a fire in you that then provided the fuel to go and do stuff. And you're like, if we don't create that difficult situation, you never test a kid. They won't be able to like find it within themselves to rise out of it.
And
but of course,
be resilient.
As soon as we get kids, we're like, well, no, we don't want them to go through the pain that we went through. We don't want them to do the hard stuff we went through. We don't want them to like have their heart broken. Even though we know you have to have your heart broken.
How do you manage that? Like, what's the hardest emotion in your kids for you to deal with? I remember over a long time it was also my kids going, I'm bored. I'd be like, oh, I'm a failure if my kids are bored.
Yeah, they don't have an imagination. No, I like them. I like them being bored.
Somehow it's my job for them not to be bored. If they're bored, I've not done a good job.
You were like, I have to provide and to, like something for them to do.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I mean, you are a provider of entertainment, Mia. I suppose that's you feel that's what
Well, hello. Like, I remember thinking I wish I was one of the Play School presenters. Benita from Play School was my mum because it seemed like she would always be fun.
Yeah, totally.
And Justine Clark is a friend of mine, and I'm like, your kids just must have had the best time having a Play School mum, like a literal Play School presenter as their mum. And she's like, oh, no, I'm not like that at home. What do you like at home as a dad?
I do like to try and be fun and silly, but I'm not wall-to-wall frivolity. I think I probably intellectualize things too much for the kids for their age.
Give me an example.
I think I try and talk stuff through. Like I'm always, to my own advice before of like going, you just got to stop. You've got to stop like talking things through at a 41-year-old level. Like their brains aren't cooked. Their brains just aren't cooked until they're 20. Like we know that. Yeah. That's not a hunch. That's just CAT scannable. So it's just like they're not thinking this. Like they're not thinking this. So what's the emotion that I'm be scared of them? Realistically, it's the social stuff. It's like the exclusion or not knowing why someone's not friends with them anymore. And you see it at primary school too because it's so interesting to watch the social dynamics at primary school because it's a really clumsy but effective facsimile of what happens. You know, everything just gets higher def. Like by year 12, it's like 8K high definition, like subtleties that everyone's tuned into. But in kindy, it's like 1980s computer graphics. Like it's the block version of what's going to later on.
Like Pong.
Yeah, it's going to be Pong. And then by year 12, it's like FIFA on PlayStation 5. Like it's really high definition. So that's interesting to see. You can see it germinating. For me, it's that thing of not understanding why someone's not friends. Like if someone was like mean to one of the kids, like a bit of like, well, they're not my friend anymore. I don't understand what happened. That's the bit where I'm like, it's heartbreaking for me. But I also know, I remember what that feels like. And I also remember by the time you get older, you're like, well, sometimes that just happens and you'll never know. And it's definitely to do with the other person. But again, that's an example of me really intellectualizing it for them. They don't care. If that happens to you, and I'm not saying this is a specific instance, but let's just say that happens to someone in year 3, they're just sad and that's confusing for them. Their 41-year-old dad going, mate, you know, it happens in life and you'll realize when you're 25 that it was probably just their stuff. They don't care. They just want their dad to be like, I'm so sorry. That sucks. Do you want to go and kick the footy?
Tim Minchin said to me once that he thinks there's not a single benefit other than material of your parents being famous. Yep. How have you navigated that with the kids?
Yeah, it's a good take. I do love Tim's wisdom too. From a little age, they realize that people in the street, they know who I am, all right? And so there's a few things that I've done really consciously from the beginning. This comes from me trying to, over time, at a time that's age appropriate, educate them onto going, hey, because of what I've chosen to do as a job, fame is a byproduct. It is absolutely not the goal. I would say it's a cost. Good things happen from it, but it's on the cost side of the ledger. This is not what I say to them, but this is where it sits for me.
Then you pull out a spreadsheet.
Guys, okay, so you've got profits, you've got loss, you've got overheads. But I'm like, that's what it is, right? There's something great aspects to it. So, of course, we take the deal. You have to be honest and go like, okay, well, has it allowed me to do things professionally that are like really super rewarding, super fun, often have like outrageous compensation attached to them. So that's part of the deal. And that's part of why I've chosen to stay in this line of work. But then there are other sides of it where, people then they know who you are without you knowing who they are. And again, this is not the bit that I talked to them about, but like then they want you to fit into a world for them and, you know, you lose your anonymity. Now, I've kind of had 20 years experience of that now, so it doesn't bother me. Plus, I would say we've got a very good kind of fame, not an unenjoyable kind of fame. Like, so at the moment, I would say the things that people would know me for mostly are our Hamish and Andy podcast and Lego Masters. The people that enjoy those things are awesome. Like, I love meeting them. If you're a footy player, that's possibly a different kind of fame because you are not...
Or a politician.
Right? So you're like, your day job. So my day job is like making a fun podcast that I really love doing, doing stuff about fathering that I really love doing, and making a show about Lego that I really love doing. That's how people would know me. And because I love doing those things and they involve making something for an audience, when that audience comes to you and goes, hey, we received it and we enjoyed that transaction, like I'm stoked to meet those people. Particularly, not that I'm playing favorites here, but like the Hamish and Andy podcast listeners, as you would find from your podcast listeners, podcast listeners are amazing.
They are.
They're a real special breed because, and the difference is coming from 10 years of commercial radio, I often say in radio, it's a broad, shallow audience. And that's not shallow people. It's just that you can't listen for long. So you don't.
Right.
If you do a radio show 5 days a week, we would do 10 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone was like, I really love your radio show, they would mean it. But they're in the car Monday, maybe not Tuesday. They hear a little bit Wednesday, missed Thursday, heard half the show Friday. They might hear like an hour and a half of that 10 hours. But to them, they're like, no, I 100% of the time I'm in the car, I listen to your show.
Yeah. And it's not on in the background.
Yeah,
it's
that's
an active
we're in.
decision.
We're in. And that's true to them for that hour and a half out of 10 hours, but they heard 15% of your show. And with podcasting, podcasters hear 100%.
So the relationship is much deeper.
So that's what I mean by shallow. So it's like you have this like 2 million person, very, very wide radio audience who dip in and out, but they only hear a shallow amount of the show. For podcasting, it's much narrower, but it's much deeper. And because everyone's like fully invested. So when you meet those people, right? So when I'm out with the kids and we meet someone who listens to the show, they're lovely because it's like there's just a much deeper connection. And we do a funny show. So again, that's different than a footy player. People just want to have a laugh. And so I really enjoy those interactions. And it's like the fame that my kids have seen, I suppose, like that. So what they see mum and dad go through are really happy interactions with people. But I don't want to dismiss it for them that that's still not a weird thing, that all these people know mum and dad that aren't mum and dad's friends. Like,
yeah.
So I'm cognizant of the fact that's a really strange thing for a kid to see. But I'm also like, I'm aware that the species of fame that we have is like a really fun one. But
is that a pressure too? Because you're not always in a fun mood, I imagine.
Not always in a fun mood. 99.9% of the time people are tactful. Like,
are they?
Thankfully, still in this day and age, like so much of the time, you know, even if it is with the kids, people will be like, I don't want to interrupt. Like, I can see you with the kids. Like, we're just lucky that they're good people. From a really young age, though, it's been something I wanted to talk to the kids about because I don't want it to be something they hate. And I don't know if I'm over-egging this or not, but the one thing I always try and explain to them is like, look, those people, they know who I am because of the podcast with Andy or maybe from Lego. And, you know, you guys know about Lego. You come to the set and like they understand, they see it on TV. So to them, it is normal that like, okay, that's been happening our whole lives and we understand we have a dad that people know. I try and use it as a bit of a teachable moment to just be like, here's some things I really want them to take away from it. I was like, those people are excited because they weren't expecting to see me, but they watch the show or they have that. It's like, and so I've got a really easy opportunity here. It's only 10 seconds, but I could give them a great memory or I could we could make their day. We could give them a smile and that's a good thing to do. So we're all in agreement on that. Like, yeah. It's like, but I know I'm here with you guys. I never want you to think that that's more important than me spending time with you guys. But the reason I'm, again, to use the terminology, the reason I'm taking that deal to give them 20 seconds is because I think as a group, as a team of us, we'd be happy to just spend that 20 seconds to make that person happy and then they're kind and then they're having a good day and they can leave and we all agree on that. And then I also really try and make a point to them to be like, because I've never done this before and no one tells you what it's like to be a famous person with kids and like
No.
and it would break your heart to know that like that has made their life hard or And so the one thing I have always said since they're little kids was like, look, people know who I am. Like some people know who dad is. I was like, but I'm only two people's dads. I'm your biggest fan. So that person's a fan because they call them fans. Like, oh, dad, your fan's here.
Yeah.
They're like, dad, I think you've got a fan. He's looking over. So they're aware of that terminology fan. I was like, but they might be fans of me, but I'm fans of you guys. So I'm here with you.
Oh, that's nice.
Because I want them to take that away. I don't want them to ever be like, when we're out with dad, those people were more important.
They have the double whammy because Zoe's now pretty famous as well. And the downside of her fame, which doesn't seem to happen to you, is that she gets stalked by paparazzi.
Yeah.
When she's with the kids. And that's a whole other thing. How do you explain that to them?
You go in loops. Like we've been through every stop, I reckon. I don't know if you've had too much experience with paps, but they're definitely worse in Sydney. And I still don't really understand their ecosystem. Like I don't understand.
What don't you understand?
Like I always try and think about what their day is. And I'm like, what do they think? Like they get up and they're like, all right, we're going to go to the beach or we're like going to drive past the houses we know.
Yeah,
or,
we're going to try to make money. We're going to try to monetize someone's private moments.
Yeah. Like let's be honest, it's stalking.
Women. It's women and children.
100%. And I know there's probably someone from the Daily Mail listening to this because like, if you're a junior at the Daily Mail, it'd be your job to go through Mamamia's podcast to get clickbait. So I'll give a shout out to whoever they are trawling this at the moment. But it's mostly to feed into the Daily Mail, which I never go on. Occasionally, like someone will see it and send it to me, but like we stopped looking at that years ago because essentially it's bullying. Like it's like the Daily Mail is like they have monetized bullying. Like that's what it is. And so they pick their people that are like, this is what we've decided you represent, Mia, and that's all we're going to write about for you. And like, doesn't matter what you do, like that's your character. And so then Zoe, unfortunately, is one of the people they've picked. And so they're like, that's her character. And that is like whatever photo we get, and we just decide that it's like they're writing a soap opera.
Yeah.
And we just needed, for some reason, some evidence of you walking along the street.
Yep.
And now we'll just write whatever we want. Whatever we want. And we'll just make it up and we'll try and make other women hate you. Like that's their business model. So to find a point on it. And so that's the deal. So that exists and there's not much you can do it because you go through the whole thing of being like, this just can't be legal that someone could be at the beach taking pictures of your children.
Yeah. Someone could follow me to school with my kids.
And then if you ever said, hey, I don't think this should be legal.
And then make money out of those photos.
I don't think it should be legal. And then they could put their hand up and if a policeman came along, they could say to them, oh, no, it's legal because I'm selling them.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, well, as long as you're selling these pictures of children at the beach, that seems great. Or like airports is one, like, I don't know, there's someone at an airline, like every time you fly, there's always someone at the airport just taking a photo. Like that must be an easily searchable one. There's a part of me that just gets like, because I don't care. I care about the kids, but I don't care if someone takes my photo. And I get like, I look at the paparazzis and I'm like, what is your day, man? Like, I'm like I feel exhausted for them. I'm like, this can't be a fun way to live. The strange thing that you see pop up or the perception is like, it only ever annoys you because it's so far out of your control. That's what I mean about like, we've gone full circle. Like first you get annoyed, then you're like, we got to do something about this. And then you're like, I don't think there's ever going to be like a large public campaign to change the laws to protect celebrities' children. It's like this
Hashtag won't someone think of the
I know.
celebrities.
So no one's ever going to care. So there's that too.
They've done it in some countries, like in
France
England.
You can't.
And
It has
England,
to be pixelated. In Australia, not.
Yeah.
The bit that kind of like roils you up is when the perception that is just sort of peddled by trolls that were like, oh, well, you call them, like you must love them. I would pay anything.
Oh, God.
If the Daily Mail is really listening to this and you could pass this on to your boss, give us a call. I would love to buy a platinum membership or something that just keeps you out of it. Like whatever
It's
you're
a good new business model.
figure out what you're paying for the photos. Figure out what the clickbait earns you. I'll double it. I'd love that. Like sell us the platinum because you know you can get no ads on YouTube.
Yeah.
Could you offer us that? We're like, I'd like to subscribe to premium where I've just bought out the bored guy waiting in the CX-5 outside the front of the house.
Pay
Like
his salary.
we're buy them out.
You and Zoe used to put more photos of your kids online. And I know that I'm so relieved that I just missed that because I would have done exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like when they were younger, because it's like, it's your whole life.
Yeah.
And you're not like an actor. You're a person who talks about your life and has a life, and same with Zoe. And everyone was trying to work it out. At what point did you sort of go, oh,
There was a combination of like, social media was just invented too 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Kind of like
no one knew what it
Instagram
was
was
gonna
new.
be.
So everyone's like, all right, what do you do? And then now we're 10 years down the track. I think eventually you just go, hang on, what am I using this for? Like, it's a tool. Social media is just a tool. We all know everything you see on there is like, of course it's curated because if it wasn't, it would just be a live feed 24 hours a day. So, I mean, I just started spending a lot less time on social media too, which really improved my life because I was like, I don't enjoy spending time really that much out here. So for me, it just became this thing of being like, oh, okay. So my basic rule for social media is like, when you so feel like it, let's share something that seems fun with the people that choose to follow you. But I just think years ago, that obligation feeling of being like, hey, you got to keep everyone updated. Like, I think we're all very much over that now. Like, no one needs to see what I had for lunch or whatever. Like, we're done. So I personally just use it as a tool to go, there's some stuff to be like, here's some other things that we've worked on. I think it works well to promote stuff. Then,
but with the kids.
Oh, kids-wise, also, I just realized I was like, I don't think there's much benefit here too. And the kids, like, we probably haven't posted them for years, right? Like, I make a big deal about making my kids' birthday cakes, but they're never part of it.
Yeah.
If they are, you might see the back of a head, like, you know, like an obstructed face.
That's a conscious decision.
That's a conscious decision because I think I was just like, well, it's not going to be perfect. Because the Daily Mail take photos of kids all the time anyway. So, like, their image is out there by the decision of someone else. But for me, I was like, well, I can choose how much or how little of this I want to share of their identity. And then I'm still, you still talk about them. I talk about being a father. But I guess my rule became more like, well, It's my social media, so I just make it about me. Now, they're in the periphery and it's not like absolute. I'm sure there are still images out there and they'll pop up from time to time, but I'm not going to make an effort to get them out there. I always had a thing where like even when they were much littler, probably had a different feeling towards it. There was that perception of being like, well, hey, you posted your kids, so we can take pictures of them at the beach.
Ooh.
And I was like, yeah, but that's not how it works. That's a parent deciding something.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you had me over for drinks for Christmas. I'm going to come to your house every day now. You had me over once. You said it was okay to come over. So now I'm bringing anyone I want to your house because didn't you say it was okay to come over that one time?
Yeah.
So it's that weird, but no one, again, no one cares about this, but like outside of our family, but no one's ever going to pick up on that nuance. So you just kind of move away from it.
This wasn't the end of my conversation with Hamish because I had to ask him for all the details about his vasectomy party. He had one with a friend and they were awake and it's very funny. And obviously, being so successful, I had questions about money because not only is Hamish independently wealthy and self-made, but so is his wife. Zoe has sold half of her incredible skincare company, Go2, for an absolute fortune. And so it's quite life-changing money what they have. And while neither of them grew up with money, I wanted to know how they talk to their own kids about money. I also asked him what makes him anxious and what angers him about being a dad. Does Hamish Blake have an angry voice? Here's a little taste.
I definitely have a frustration trigger, but it's weird. Anger makes me angry. I can't handle if someone, in my perception, is like choosing to be angry, like choosing to be upset. I'm just like, no, come on.
You can listen right now via the link in our show notes. The executive producer of No Filter is Kimberly Bradish, with sound production by Maddie Joannou. I'm Mia Friedman, and thanks for having me in your ears.